How England broke down Croatia using Southgate's 4-3-3. For cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to www.jerseyfifa.com. A link will be left in the description, and use code ATLANTISFOOTBALL for 5% off. So I'm going to come on to why I think these two players must be included in England's starting 11 for their remaining group games, as I think it will aid their ball progression, which I do think was lacking throughout this game. But before I get into the analysis, let me tell you about the OneFootball app, because this is the app I use to keep up to date with the latest circulating transfer rumours, and I find the match section on the app incredibly useful, especially during the Euros, as I can keep up to date with the teams and players that I'm not able to watch on a regular basis. If you like this channel, you'll definitely love this app, so when you go to subscribe to the channel after the video, which would be very much appreciated, make sure you click the link in the description to get the OneFootball app as well. So going into the game, we saw Southgate line up the side in a 4-3-3, and the interesting things to do with his personnel, which I didn't really agree with, was having Pickford in goal. I've said before I prefer Henderson. I think Pickford is a liability, but that wasn't my main concern. My main concern was at left back. For some reason, Southgate decided to go with Kieran Trippier at left back instead of Luke Shaw or Ben Chilwell. I assume that Ben Chilwell, Maguire and Sancho were all injured because they weren't included in the 23-man squad for this match. If they weren't, that is even more concerning, because it means that Southgate instead decided to pick two keepers for the squad instead of an outfield player. But I assume those players were injured. But Shaw was still available, so I'm a bit perplexed why he didn't go with Shaw in that position instead of Trippier. I was expecting there to be a specific reason for Trippier being used at left back, maybe for him to, when he's in the attacking third, to cut in and really whip in a curling cross for Kane maybe. But that didn't really materialise throughout the game, so I was a bit perplexed as to why he'd gone for Trippier at left back instead of Shaw, particularly because Trippier is right-footed, and we did see throughout the game, I think it was in the first half, Trippier gets down the line and he's forced to cut back inside in order to get in on his right foot, whereas Shaw could have easily just come onto the ball and whipped in the cross with his left foot first time. So that was a bit confusing. I was also slightly confused by his decision to play Phillips and Declan Rice in the midfield, but not use them as a double pivot. See, what we saw was England in possession would use a 2-3-4-1 shape, which we do see a lot of sides use. When they use a 4-3-3 system, this becomes their possession shape. And what this basically allowed was Declan Rice to be the anchor man in midfield. It would allow Trippier and Walker to push slightly further forward, and it also gave Stones and Mings the ability to drift slightly wider, and it would allow England to progress the ball forward with those centre-backs in wider positions, with Declan Rice covering the central position. Now, what was interesting was that Phillips was being used in a role that he's not normally used in for Leeds. We normally see him in that Declan Rice position as a deeper midfielder, but in this game he was pushing up into the half space, same as Mason Mount on the other side, and we saw both him and Mason Mount really trying to get in behind the Croatia midfield, and what this did is it pushed Croatia's midfield back. And I think this was the reason they started dropping a lot deeper. I think if England had gone with a double pivot, we would have seen Croatia maybe push higher up the pitch to press. Instead, they pressed in a 4-5-1 with Kramaric as the central striker. And when the ball was moved out to one of the wide centre-backs, we would see either Modric or Kovacic push out to close down that space, creating a temporary 4-4-2 shape. But in the first half, England had the better, or certainly in the first part of the first half, England looked much the better side. When they were pressing, we saw them press in a narrow 4-3-3, and it was very coordinated, which you have to give Southgate credit for, as a lot of people seem to overlook the importance of a pressing shape, because what a lot of teams will do is they'll drop. We saw this with Turkey on Friday, and you can check out that video that I did an analysis on the Italy-Turkey game and how Turkey retreated far too deep, the wide midfielders particularly. But in this game we saw Foden and Sterling retain higher positions alongside Kane, and this allowed England to win the ball back high up the pitch. When the ball gets shifted out to a wide position, this would then allow Mount and Phillips on the either side of central midfield to really push out and close down Croatia and stop them being able to play out of their defensive third. And England won the ball back a lot in the Croatia half, and this allowed them to sustain attacks throughout the first half. I did think that midway through the first half, England did drop off too deep. We saw them retreat into a 4-5-1 shape, and this gave Marcelo Brozovic a lot of space in midfield, and this is when Croatia really started to progress the ball into England's defensive third, and it was because of this drop off in the press. I would have liked to see, if England were going to drop back into a shape where the wide attackers, Foden and Sterling, were sitting a bit deeper, I would have maybe like Mount to have pushed up onto Brozovic to stop him getting on the ball and turning with it. That didn't happen, which is a minor thing when you look at the outcome of the game, but it's just something to be wary of for future games, particularly in the knockout stages, when you're going to come up against better sides who can really pen you in throughout our game. Now, in possession, whilst England did start pretty well, we saw Mount create a chance for Sterling, or a half chance, where he played the ball in behind as Sterling made a run in behind the back line. But and Foden hit the post as well. But apart from that, England didn't really create much. We would see Kane dropping off from the forward line. I don't think we saw enough of Foden and Sterling making diagonal runs into that space when Kane would drop off and drag a centre-back with him. I would have preferred that to happen a lot more, particularly from Foden. I think it may have been a better idea to switch the two, have Foden playing from the left and Sterling from the right, as I do think Foden in particular is a lot better off the ball when he's able to be on his stronger left foot and make those diagonal runs in behind his fullback. So that is a main reason why England weren't able to create a lot of chances in the first half despite the possession. So going into half time, I didn't really get the optimism from the BBC pundits. They seemed very upbeat. They were talking about how well England were playing. I think this is sort of an illusion we do see from the public and a lot of the pundits. Just because you have a lot of the possession doesn't mean that you're really controlling the game, or you're the better side. You're simply just controlling more of the ball. And with Croatia being content to sit back and soak up the pressure, this was kind of playing into their game plan. However, Croatia themselves I was pretty disappointed with in the first half. They didn't really have much attacking threat. You would assume with Perisic and Rebic on either flank, they would really have a counter-attacking threat, and that would allow them to transition the attack quickly, and they weren't really looking to do that either. They were looking to, when they won the ball, to retain possession. So in the first half, I did think I was a bit disappointed by both sides, but going into the second half, I would have definitely brought on Shaw for Trippier. He was the first player I talked about at the start of the video. I just think his ball progression is so much better than Trippier's. Trippier does give me Ashley Young vibes. He gets the ball, stands still a lot, and it does sort of take away from that rapid ball progression that we do see with players like Reece James and Luke Shaw, and that's why I would prefer Luke Shaw to be starting the next game. I also thought Grealish, I was shocked he didn't come on throughout the second half, because right at the start of the second half we did see Foden being given a lot more freedom to move in field, and this did certainly aid England in creating overloads, and this did contribute to the goal, Sterling's goal. But I did think that Grealish was the perfect player for this. If he was on the left instead of Sterling, we could have seen him floating into those positions. But the goal did come, and it did come from Calvin Phillips' positioning in the half space, who I thought was excellent all game and really showed that he's a versatile central midfielder. He doesn't have to just play in that deeper lying midfield role that we saw Declan Rice playing in, and Sterling's movement in behind the back line, which is something I alluded to I wanted to see more of in the first half, and Sterling did deliver for the goal. So what we saw is England in their 2-3-4-1 shape, and Walker was sitting quite deep in this phase of play, and Phillips as well. What he does is he drags Kovacic up the pitch in that deeper position and then makes a run in behind him into the space that's just been created. Walker does well to find him, and Calvin Phillips has great ball control and composure to go round one of the Croatia players, and I think Kane deserves a lot of credit for his movement. A lot of strikers may have positioned themselves slightly more over to the left, which would have closed up this space, but Kane recognises that if he makes a run over to the right side, this is going to drag the centre-back with him, and this opens up the space for Sterling to make the diagonal run into. Calvin Phillips firstly sees a pass, which is a very underrated skill, especially from this sort of position. A lot of players just say it was Henderson in that position. I would have imagined he would have looked to play a pass backwards or hold on to the ball, but Phillips sees that potential threat coming from Sterling. Sterling makes a run, the ball into him is excellent, and Sterling finishes the chance. And overall, I think this is exactly the type of goal you would expect England to be scoring. Kane's movement, dragging a player out of that back line, creating the space, and you have one of the wide attackers making a darting run into that position, into the goal scoring position. And I think this is where England are most threatening from this sort of phase of play, and I do think this is why we may see sides set up with a back five against England to really close up those spaces, allow the wing backs to stay wider but not create the space between the wing backs and the centre backs as a back four would. Croatia did certainly look a lot better in the second half. We saw them trying to overload on the right side, with Modric pushing up the field into that right-sided half space. Vizako also there, and Rebic was also on that side at times as well. And but they didn't really create much from these positions. I did speak about this in my predictions video. I do think Croatia are vastly overrated, particularly losing Rakitic and players like Mandzukic as well. I think we did see that as well, the lack of a focal point as a striker. They use Kramaric as a sole striker, and he's more of a poacher advanced forward who's going to sit on the last defender and make runs in behind the back line. He's not going to be dropping deep to link the play, and that's really what Croatia missed in this game, and I think that's a mistake that their manager made. If you're going to go with Kramaric up front, he should have gone with Vlasic, the former Everton player, playing ahead of Modric and Brozovic. This would have suited them a lot better, but instead it was pretty easy for England to cut off the passing lanes between the lines and really stagnate their play. But I don't think England can get overconfident. I think this is a Croatia side that was underperforming, so it can sort of lead to an over-expectation. England also didn't create a lot of chances, which is why I was shocked that Grealish didn't come into the side in the second half. And I do think him and Shaw have to be starters for the Scotland game. Shaw will just offer so much more going forward down the left side than Trippier, and I would put in Grealish. If you're going to go for a 4-3-3, you could the midfield three is fine for me with Phillips and Mount, but I would like to see maybe Mount on the right side, Grealish on the left of central midfield ahead of Rice in certain games, particularly against Scotland and the Czech Republic. But if not, I think Grealish has to be a starter, even if you're just going with Foden or maybe Sancho on that right side, holding their width a lot more. But despite Sterling's goal, I know he did score the winner, but I did feel underwhelmed by him. I always think that when he gets into dangerous positions, he's too hesitant. Whereas if you look at Sancho and Grealish, and even Foden at times as well, they seem to know exactly what they're going to do when they get on the ball. But Sterling's a guaranteed starter now for the big games because of this goal. I don't see Southgate changing it, so I do think that the right attacking midfield or the right forward spot is going to be between Sancho and Foden. I would maybe like to see Sancho play. I think his ball progression is a bit better than Foden's, but I think Grealish and Shaw are the two that have to come into the side just to aid England's ball progression into the attacking third. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed that video, subscribe, like, click the bell for notifications, check out some of my other videos linked in the description below. Also follow my non-football channel. I'll leave that linked in the description as well. I will be uploading more videos to that as well. And follow me on Instagram and Twitter for more content and updates as well.